Hi, I'm Scarlett. I never thought I'd be sharing this story, but here I am. You see, I was living what seemed like a perfect life with my husband James until things took an unexpected turn. She's absolutely beautiful, I whispered, holding our newborn daughter Emma for the first time. Her tiny fingers wrapped around mine, and despite the doctor's concerned faces, all I saw was perfection. We'll face whatever comes together, James said, his hand steady on my shoulder. The diagnosis came shortly after: cerebral palsy. Sure, it wasn't what we'd planned for, but Emma was our miracle. The first few months will be critical, Dr. Chen explained during our follow-up appointment. But I've seen remarkable progress in many of my patients with early intervention. I was grateful for Dr. Chen's dedication, but I couldn't ignore the way my mother-in-law Barbara pressed her lips together during every visit. Being the head of the hospital board made her opinion carry weight, whether I liked it or not. Have you considered what this means for your future? Barbara cornered me one afternoon in the hospital corridor. The financial burden, the constant care requirements. She's our daughter, not a burden. My dear, I'm just being practical. I've seen cases like this before. Sometimes difficult decisions need to be made. Thank goodness for my best friend Lisa, who worked as a nurse in the same hospital. Don't let her get to you, girl. I've seen that look in Barbara's eyes before when dealing with special needs cases. She's got some outdated views about what makes a life valuable. The tension reached its peak during Emma's 2-month checkup. I was in the waiting room when I overheard Barbara talking to another doctor. Such a shame about my granddaughter. There are still options, you know. Quality of life considerations. My blood ran cold. Was she seriously suggesting what I thought she was? Your mother-in-law's got quite the reputation here, Lisa told me later that day. She's influenced a lot of medical decisions over the years. Not always for the better. We need to document everything, I decided. Every comment, every suggestion. Already on it, Lisa winked, pulling out a small notebook. I've got your back. That evening, James found me crying in Emma's nursery. What's wrong? Your mother? She's been talking to doctors about Emma, about options. The look on his face told me he understood exactly what I meant. I'm so sorry. I knew she could be controlling, but we won't let her anywhere near Emma's medical decisions. I promise. I held Emma closer, watching her peaceful face as she slept. Little did Barbara know, she had just started a war she couldn't win. Nobody threatens my daughter's future. Nobody. The next morning, I noticed Barbara hovering around Emma's medical team more than usual. Her whispered conversation stopped whenever I approached, but I caught fragments that made my skin crawl. I've seen several specialists about alternative care facilities, she was telling Dr. Chen. Some that specialize in severe cases. Mrs. Harrison, I've already explained that Emma is responding well to her current treatment plan. When someone with my experience suggests a consultation, it's usually wise to listen. I wasn't the only one who noticed. Michael, James's younger brother, pulled me aside after visiting hours. You need to hear this. Mom was on the phone in her office yesterday. She's been contacting facilities in other states, talking about quality of life transfers, whatever that means. Did she mention Emma specifically? Yeah, and get this. She was saying something about how sometimes parents aren't equipped to make objective decisions. She's trying to build some kind of case. My hands started shaking. She's trying to take control of Emma's medical decisions. Listen, I've got recordings. Mom doesn't know I was there, but I turned on my phone when I heard Emma's name. Just then, Barbara rounded the corner, her heels clicking against the hospital floor. Having a nice chat about me? Michael, I thought I taught you better than to gossip in hallways. Cut the act, Barbara. We know what you're doing. What I'm doing is trying to save this family from years of heartache. You're all too emotional to see the reality of the situation. James appeared behind her, his face tight with anger. The reality, Mother, is that you're going behind our backs to interfere with my daughter's care. Darling, please, I'm only what? Trying to get rid of my granddaughter because she doesn't fit your perfect family image? Dr. Chen stepped out of a nearby room, clipboard in hand. Actually, Mrs. Harrison, I think we need to discuss your recent attempts to access Emma's medical files without authorization. I am on the hospital board. which gives you absolutely no right to pressure my staff or attempt to influence treatment decisions for a patient who isn't under your care. You don't understand what's at stake here, Barbara hissed. I've handled cases like this before. Sometimes families need guidance to make the right choice, like the Jensen case. Dr. Chen's voice was steel. Or the Ramirez twins? I've been doing some digging of my own. Barbara's face went white. Those cases were different. Were they? Because I have records showing your guidance led to several families losing custody of their special needs children. Children who mysteriously ended up in facilities where you had financial interests. James stepped between his mother and me. You're done here. Stay away from my family. You're making a terrible mistake, Barbara warned, but her usual confidence was cracking. These cases, they destroy families. I'm trying to protect you. No, I shot back. You're trying to control us. But guess what? We've got evidence now. Every phone call, every unauthorized file access, every conversation, and we're just getting started. The certified letter arrived 3 days later. Barbara was petitioning for medical power of attorney over Emma, claiming James and I were emotionally compromised and refusing necessary medical interventions. She's really gone off the deep end this time, Lisa said, scanning the documents. But look at this. She's listed 3 previous cases where she intervened. Rookie mistake. Those could be our smoking gun. Michael, can you get access to Mom's office computer? Already did. You wouldn't believe the emails I found. She's been planning this since before Emma was born. Had paperwork ready and everything. James paced the hospital room, his phone buzzing constantly. The board wants to meet tomorrow. Apparently, several other families have come forward. Good. Dr. Chen walked in, carrying a thick folder. Because I've got signed statements from 5 different nurses about Barbara's unauthorized access to patient files, plus documentation of her financial ties to those special care facilities she keeps recommending. Got another bomb to drop, Lisa chimed in. Remember the Ramirez twins? Their parents are willing to testify. Turns out Barbara threatened to report them to child services if they didn't agree to her treatment plan. The hospital boardroom felt like a pressure cooker the next morning. Barbara sat at one end, still playing the concerned grandmother act. Everything I've done has been for the good of these families. Sometimes parents need professional guidance to make difficult decisions. Professional guidance? A board member shuffled through some papers. Like pressuring the Jensen family to give up custody while you held shares in the facility their son was transferred to? That's a gross mischaracterization. We have the transfer paperwork, Michael interrupted. With your signature and the investment documents. Real sloppy record-keeping, Mom. You ungrateful little... Barbara caught herself smoothing her blazer. This is a family matter that's being blown completely out of proportion. Family matter? I stood up, my voice shaking. You tried to have my daughter sent away. You went behind our backs to manipulate her medical care. How many other families did you destroy? I was protecting the hospital's interests. These cases drain resources, damage our success metrics. These cases are children, Dr. Chen cut in. Children whose families you traumatized because they didn't meet your standards of perfection? James hadn't said a word until now. You know what's funny, Mother? Emma's latest tests show significant improvement. The very treatments you tried to stop? They're working. But you didn't care about that, did you? You just couldn't stand having a less-than-perfect grandchild. The board will be conducting a full investigation, the chairman announced. In the meantime, Mrs. Harrison, you're suspended from all hospital duties. Please surrender your credentials. You can't do this to me. I built this department. And now you'll watch it thrive without you, Lisa said, collecting Barbara's badge. Starting with a complete review of every special needs case you've ever touched. Walking out, I heard Barbara call after us. You have no idea what you're doing. Those families needed my guidance. No, James replied, not even turning around. They needed protection from you. And now they'll get it. The hospital board hearing room was packed. Families I'd never met sat shoulder to shoulder, each with their own story about Barbara. The Ramirez family spoke first, their twins now healthy teenagers. She told us our babies would never walk, never talk. Said we were cruel for not sending them to her special facility. Look at them now. Honor roll students. Barbara sat stone-faced as more parents stood up. More cases have come to light, the board chairman announced. 27 families over 15 years. Mrs. Harrison, how do you respond to these allegations? Everything I did was protocol. These families were in denial, like I was in denial. I stood up, holding Emma. 6 months of therapy, and look at my daughter's progress. The same daughter you wanted to handle differently. The board has reviewed all evidence, the chairman continued, including financial records showing Mrs. Harrison's investments in 3 long-term care facilities where she referred 13 children after pressuring their families to give up custody. This is a witch hunt. I was protecting the hospital's reputation. By profiting from vulnerable families? Michael stepped forward with a stack of papers. Here's proof of every kickback you received. Real smart keeping it all in a folder labeled consultation fees. The whispers in the room grew louder. Dr. Chen presented her findings next. Medical records were altered, prognoses made deliberately worse, all to convince parents they were unequipped to care for their children. You can't prove intent, Barbara snapped. Actually, we can. Your own emails spell it out pretty clearly. The board's decision was unanimous. Barbara's medical license was revoked, and the hospital would be contacting law enforcement about the financial fraud. A lifetime of service, destroyed by emotional hysteria, Barbara muttered, gathering her things. No, James spoke up. Destroyed by your own arrogance. Those families trusted you. I trusted you. And I was right. Special needs children destroy families. Look around this room, Lisa interrupted. Every family you tried to break, they're stronger than ever. Those kids you said would never achieve anything, they're thriving. Emma chose that moment to show off her new skill, pointing at Barbara and saying clear as day, "Bye-bye." The room erupted in applause while Barbara's face turned red. 6 months ago, you wanted to ship her off, I said. Today, she's hitting every milestone you said she never would. So who exactly was in denial? 1 year later, Emma's story became part of the hospital's new training program on ethical patient care. Barbara tried reaching out once, sending a card on Emma's birthday. Return to sender, James said, not even opening it. Some bridges stay burned. We sat watching Emma in her therapy session, mastering her new walker. Remember when your mom said she'd never walk? Look at her now, James smiled. Though I kind of wish she'd slow down a bit. She's getting too fast for me to catch. Dr. Chen joined us, clipboard in hand. Emma's case is being published in a medical journal. Proof that early intervention and a family support trump institutionalization every time. Think Barbara will read it? Who cares? Lisa chimed in. She's old news. Last I heard, she moved to Florida. Turns out nobody up here wants a doctor who sees dollar signs instead of patients. Watching Emma zoom down the hallway, giggling with her therapist, I felt nothing but peace. Sometimes karma doesn't just come around. It runs victory laps. What would you do if a family member tried to make medical decisions for your child behind your back? Would you expose them publicly like Scarlett did? Or handle it privately to keep the peace? Share your thoughts below. And if Emma's story touched you, hit like and subscribe for more real stories about standing up against toxic family members. Sometimes the hardest battles are fought against the people who should be supporting us the most. Did you have a similar experience with family members trying to control your life decisions? Let me know in the comments.